to be changed, and I would just say, Mr. President, thank God for Chuck Colson, and I thank my good friend from Vermont for giving me a few moments here on the floor.
President.
Senator from Vermont.
Mr. President, gaining my time for this side, I appreciate the senator from Missouri speaking about Brian Wimes. I agree. This is a judicial vacancy in the U.S. District Court for the Western Eastern Districts of Missouri. It has the support of both home state senators, Senator McCaskill and Senator Blunt. It was voted favorably by the Judiciary Committee 4 months ago. There's really no justification to have taken this long. In the past, whether you had Democratic or Republican presidents, a nomination like this would be routinely done by voice vote the week it came out of committee. The Senate is still, so far this year, only considering judicial nominations that could and should have been confirmed last year. It's not the fault of the President, it's the fault of the Senate. I know the majority leader, Senator Reid, has tried to get them up. I wish the other side stopped blocking. We should get them done. We'll conclude the first 4 months of this year having only considered judicial nominees who should have been confirmed last December. I don't want to hear anybody on the other side say, look how fast we're moving judges this year. We're not. These are all from last year. They were blocked last year, and they should have been done last year. We have yet to get to any of the nominees we should be considering this year because Republicans objected to move quickly. And I ask consent my full statement be made part of the record.
Without objection.
And, Mr. President, while I saw the floor, I note that today marks the beginning, and I ask that these remarks be as in morning business.
Without objection.
I ask also, though, not to delay the time. In fact, I'd ask consent that the vote still be at 5:30.
Without objection.
Today marks the beginning of the 31st Annual National Crime Victims' Rights Week. It's a time to recognize the losses faced by victims of crime and their families, acknowledge the efforts being made to help them recover and rebuild their lives in the wake of tragedy. It's a time to reflect on all that we've accomplished, then focus on what we have to do to help victims. Of course, one of the best tools for delivering that help is the Crime Victims Fund. Now, unfortunately, in recent months, some have sought to violate the Victims of Crime Act. They want to take money out of the trust fund for purposes and programs not authorized by the Victims of Crime Act. I've worked with senators from both sides of the aisle. And we've been able to stop this raid on crime victims funding. And I want to commend Senators Mikulski and Hutchinson, the chair and ranking members of the Commerce, Justice, and Science Appropriations Subcommittee for their important efforts in this regard in the appropriations bill we reported to the Senate last week. The Senate Appropriations Committee, in which I serve, has reported a bill that preserves the Crime Victims Fund. We succeeded in increasing the funding next year for victims' compensation and assistance to $775 million. To be able to increase federal assistance by $70 million from last year's cap is extraordinary in these economic times. But it's an indication here in the Senate of our commitment to crime victims. It's a matter in which I've worked with Senator Crapo as well as Senator Mikulski over the year. And I appreciate their leadership in this effort. You know, the Crime Victims Fund is not taxpayers' money. It comes from penalties and fines. It comes from wrongdoers. And we designed it to help victims of crime. We all know the states are being forced to tighten their belts. And when they do, victim services are being cut all over the country. Without the federal assistance from this trust fund, victims' compensation programs and victims' assistance programs and services are going to be unavailable to many. Currently, pending before the Senate, the majority leader's motion to proceed to the Violence Against Women's Act. S-1925. It's legislation I introduced with Senator Crapo last year. We have 61 bipartisan co-sponsors, both parties. The bill we debate this week is based on the recommendations of victims, but also the tireless professionals who work with them every day. April is also Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and our bill takes the important step of focusing increased attention on sexual assaults, including those who are among the most vulnerable among us. So I listened to Senator Murray, Senator Feinstein, Senator Shaheen, Senator Gillibrand. After I spoke with Senator Hagan last week about the pending motion to proceed to the VAWA reauthorization legislation, I thought how fortunate we all are to serve with him. I remember when 9 women senators joined together to contribute to the book 9 and Counting about their paths to the United States Senate. And these women have served as role models for many other young women and young girls. Even as Senator Clinton has gone on to become our Secretary of State. And there have been other changes. 6 of the 9 senators who were subjects of the book in 2001 still serve with us today. And they've been joined by 9 additional women senators from around the country. You know, this book, 9 and Counting, it's kind of a title looking to the future. Today, 17 women serve in the United States Senate. And that is a great step forward. We have further go, of course. It's a lot better than when I came to the Senate. We had no women serving. 16 of them have joined from both sides of the aisle to bring their leadership and their strong support, but also their experience to the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act. And our bill includes a number of provisions that they've championed and suggested. I'll give you one example. Our bill includes the provisions that Senator Klobuchar and Senator Hutchinson had suggested, introduces the Stalkers Act of 2011. That provision is new to VAWA. Now, it would not have been included if we simply put it in a one-sentence reauthorization of VAWA rather than a comprehensive bill. We did a comprehensive bill because it makes many improvements, like the bill of Senator Klobuchar and Senator Hutchinson, the Stalkers Act of 2011. Now, in the spirit of National Crime Victims' Rights Week, our VAWA reauthorization bill takes steps to recognize victims whose needs are not being served, helps us find ways to help them. Now, that approach is not radical or extreme. The fact that the bill reaches more victims should not be a basis for partisan division. It's something we ought to celebrate. You know, I've said on the floor, a victim is a victim is a victim. Mr. President, when my earlier career, when I'd go to a crime scene for the police as the chief law enforcement officer of our county, and I'd go there at 3 o'clock in the morning, you might have a badly battered woman. If she survived, sometimes they did not survive. I never heard the police say, well, if we're going to do something on this, we have to figure out whether this victim is a Democrat or Republican. Well, we have to figure out whether this victim is gay or straight. Oh, we have to figure out, no. They said, this victim, let us find out who did this. And let's get them and let's see what we can do. The victim is still alive, what we can do to protect the victim. That's what the Violence Against Women Act has always done, and what I've tried to do for crime victims for many years. This bill reaches out to help more victims by taking responsible. Incidentally, we've done this on every reauthorization bill. We've learned from past experience how to make it better, and now we make it better by taking responsible and moderate steps, in this case protect immigrant and Native women, and ensuring services to victims regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. Again, under the mantra, a victim is a victim is a victim. And since its introduction last November, more than 700 state and national organizations have written to endorse the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act. 200 national organizations, 500 state and local organizations, the National Task Force to End Sexual and Domestic Violence, the National Association of Attorneys General, the National District Attorneys Association, the National Sheriff's Association, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, 25 religious organizations, the mayors of 3 of the nation's largest cities, New York and Chicago and Los Angeles, wrote to the Senate. They urge us to pass VAWA reauthorization. We've heard from 47 state attorneys general, Republican and Democratic alike, urging Senate passage of this legislation. And that's because they recognize this federal law is meaningful and that this reauthorization addresses the ongoing unmet needs of victims in their states. And I ask at the conclusion of my remarks, Mr. President, I ask consent that these letters be placed in the record.
Without objection.
And in fact, today, I was advised by Bruce Cohen in my office that we've received a statement of administrative position. It's a very strong statement from the White House and a strong statement in support of the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act. And I ask consent that be placed in the statement in the record at the end of my remarks.
Without objection.
So I'm glad that finally moving to this. You know, the last 2 reauthorizations, each one an improvement on the one before, passed this body unanimously. Mr. President, we should do the same. You know, it's not a partisan issue. I'd ask senators, if you haven't talked to victims of abuse, talk to those who have. Talk to your police chiefs. Talk to the people who have to deal with this. Talk to the people who have survived some of these horrendous attacks. Ask them if they think this is needed. Or ask those who have been protected from further abuse because of the steps we can take in the Violence Against Women Act. Ask them if we need it. Mr. President, you and I and the other 98 senators come in this building. We're protected by police, and one of the finest police forces there is, the Capitol Police Force. We don't have to worry. Nobody's going to attack us. Mr. President, in your state and my state, and all the other states, unfortunately, there are thousands of people who cannot rest easily that way. They know their attacker is often attacked them before and is waiting to do it again. We can easily stand up and say here in the Senate, no, we won't stand for this violence against women. Let's take our step, the thing we can do, the men and women in this body. Let's take the steps that we can do to stop the violence. Mr. President, I yield the floor and suggest the absolute quorum.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. Alexander.
Mr. President,
Senator from Vermont,
President, I ask consent to call the quorum be dispensed with.
without objection.
And Mr. President, the yeas and nays been requested.
They have not.
Mr. President, I ask the yeas and nays of the nomination.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka, Mr. Alexander, Ms. Ayotte, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Baucus, Mr. Begich, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Bingaman, Mr. Blumenthal, Mr. Blunt, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Boxer, Mr. Brown of Massachusetts, Mr. Brown of Ohio, Mr. Burr, Ms. Cantwell. Ms. Cantwell, Mr. Cardin, Mr. Carper, Mr. Casey, Mr. Chambliss, Mr. Coates, Mr. Coburn, Mr. Cochran, Ms. Collins, Mr. Conrad, Mr. Coons, Mr. Corker, Mr. Cornyn, Mr. Crapo, Mr. DeMint, Mr. Durbin, Mr. Enzi, Mrs. Feinstein, Mr. Franken, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mrs. Hagan, Mr. Harkin, Mr. Hatch, Mr. Heller, Mr. Hoven, Mrs. Hutchison, Mr. Inhofe, Mr. Inouye, Mr. Isaacson, Mr. Johans, Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, Mr. Kerry, Mr. Kirk, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Cole, Mr. Kyle, Ms. Landrieu, Mr. Lautenberg, Mr. Leahy, Mr. Lee, Mr. Levin, Mr. Lieberman, Mr. Lugar, Mr. Manchin, Mr. McCain, Mrs. McCaskill, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez, Mr. Merkley, Ms. Mikulski, Mr. Moran, Ms. Murkowski, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Nelson of Nebraska, Mr. Nelson of Florida, Mr. Paul, Mr. Portman, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, Mr. Reed of Nevada, Mr. Risch, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Rockefeller, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Sessions, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Shelby, Ms. Snow, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Tester, Mr. Thune, Mr. Toomey,
That's the last time I voted for this one guy.
Mr. Udall of Colorado, Mr. Udall of New Mexico, Mr. Vitter, Mr. Warner, Mr. Webb, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden, Senators voting in the affirmative: Akaka, Alexander, Bingaman, Bozeman, Brown of Massachusetts, Coates, Coburn, Collins, Conrad, Coons, Corker, Crapo, Grassley, Inhofe, Johans, Cole, Kyle, Leahy, Lieberman, Manchin, McCaskill, Nelson of Florida, Pryor, Shaheen, Shelby, Tester, Whitehouse, and Wyden. Mr. Blunt, aye. Mr. McConnell, aye. Mr. Graham, aye. Mr. Isaacson, aye. Mrs. Hagan, aye. Mr. Barrasso, aye. Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, aye. Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, aye. Mr. Nelson of Nebraska, aye. Mr. Blumenthal, aye. Mrs. Hutchison, aye. Mr. Thune, aye. Mr. Cornyn, aye. Mr. Webb, aye. Mr. Lugar, aye. Mr. Rubio, aye. Mr. Sanders, aye. Ms. Mikulski, aye. Mr. Carper, aye. Mr. Rockefeller, Mr. Rockefeller, aye. Mr. Risch, Mr. Risch, aye. Mr. Hoven, Mr. Hoven, aye. Mr. Levin, aye. Mr. Kerry, aye. Mr. Paul, aye. Mr. Begich, aye. Mr. Warner, aye. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, aye. Ms. Ayotte, aye. Mr. Menendez, aye. Mrs. Gillibrand, aye. Mr. Roberts, aye. Ms. Klobuchar, aye. Mrs. Boxer, aye. Mr. Franken,
I'll vote aye.
Mr. Franken, aye. Ms. Snow, aye. Mr. Chambliss, aye. Ms. Murkowski, aye. Mr. Burr, aye. Mr. Hatch, aye. Mr. Heller, aye. Mr. Cardin, aye. Mr. Sessions, aye. Mr. Brown of Ohio, aye. Mr. Lautenberg, aye. Mr. Wicker, aye. Mr. Enzi, aye. Mr. Lee, no. Mr. Udall? Mr. Udall of Colorado? Aye. Ms. Cantwell? Ms. Cantwell? Aye. Mr. Baucus? Mr. Baucus? Aye. Mr. Moran? Aye. Mr. Moran? Aye. Mrs. Feinstein? Mrs. Feinstein? Aye. Mr. Portman? Mr. Portman? Aye. Ms. Stabenow? Ms. Stabenow? Aye. Ms. Landrieu? Ms. Landrieu? Aye. Mr. Harkin? Mr. Harkin? Aye. Mr. Merkley? Mr. Merkley? Aye. Mr. Udall? Mr. Udall of New Mexico? Aye. Mr. Cochran? Mr. Cochran? Aye. Mr. Reed? Mr. Reed of Nevada? Aye. Mr. Durbin? Mr. Durbin? Aye. Mrs. Murray? Mrs. Murray? Aye. Mr. Schumer? Mr. Schumer? Aye. Mr. Bennett? Mr. Bennett? Aye.
Are there any senators wishing to vote or to change their vote? Seeing none on this vote, the yeas are 92, and the nomination is confirmed. Oh, the nays are 1. The nomination is confirmed. Under the previous order, the motion to reconsider is considered made and laid upon the table. The President will be immediately notified of the Senate's action, and the Senate will resume legislative session. The senator from Minnesota.
Yes, Madam President, I rise today to discuss the importance of addressing the financial challenges now facing the U.S. Postal Service.
May we have order in the Senate?
And our critical need to ensure that it remains a strong and reliable resource for the people of our country. The American Postal Service was created over 2 centuries ago as a function of the federal government acknowledged in the United States Constitution. In those last 220 years, the way we send mail and exchange correspondence has changed dramatically. You no longer need a stamp or an envelope. You can shoot an email, you can sign on to Facebook, but even with those changes, the fact remains. No matter who you are or where you live, odds are that the post office plays a vital role in your daily life. Seniors rely on the Postal Service to receive their medications. Businesses rely on it to ship and receive goods. Countless jobs hinge on its services both directly and indirectly. No matter how far we've come with technology in this digital age, there are some things that simply can't be sent by email, and that is why reliable, timely mail service is something that all Americans should be able to count on. I've heard from numerous people in my state about the negative impacts that the closure of certain post offices or mail processing facilities would have on their communities. I've heard from state and local leaders about the impact of closing the mail processing facilities in Duluth and Bemidji. I've heard from farmers who actually get their goods and ship their products through those mail processing centers, and that's why I've worked with Senator Sanders and roughly 25 of my colleagues in the Senate, including Senator Durbin, 1/4 of the entire U.S. Senate, to negotiate changes to this original bill. I want to thank Chairman Lieberman and Senator Collins Carper for their great leadership, and I'm really glad about some of the changes that they've made. The substitute amendment would, in fact, keep at a minimum 100 mail processing plants that are currently scheduled to close would remain open for at least 3 years. Overnight delivery standards in regional areas will be protected. A large number of rural post offices that are being studied for closure will remain open. I'm a co-sponsor of the amendment to the legislation which would provide important safeguards before closing mail processing facilities, and I've also co-sponsored the McCaskill-Merkley amendment that would establish a 2-year moratorium on closing rural post offices and recognize the concerns of rural residents. There is no doubt, Madam President, that changes need to be made to the Postal Service to make it more competitive in the digital world. I think a lot of those changes are contained in this substitute amendment. We can even make it stronger, and I strongly believe that we can reach a balance that makes necessary reforms while maintaining the quick, consistent service that Americans have come to rely on. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
The senator from Washington.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I come to the floor this evening to express my strong opposition to the resolution of disapproval that was filed by Senate Republicans that seeks to overturn critical new NLRB rules that will protect workers across America, and I strongly urge my colleagues to oppose it. Madam President, some of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle frequently complain about how we spend our time here on the Senate floor. Well, today I have to say I'm disappointed that we are being forced to spend valuable time on this issue. Middle-class families across America are continuing to struggle in this very tough economy, and it's hard to understand why Senate Republicans want to spend time attacking an agency whose mission is to protect workers and employers, and which is critical to protecting access to middle class for workers and families. Thankfully, as we all know, our economy seems to be stepping back from the precipice, but for so many workers today, paychecks still have not caught up, benefits continue to slip away, hours are getting cut, and job security is eroding. That's why I was very glad that at the end of last year, the National Labor Relations Board voted to adopt modest, common-sense rules that would make it easier for workers to fight for fair treatment in the workplace and help bring the NLRB into the 21st century. These new rules aren't going to solve every problem, but they are a good step in the right direction. They will help our workers and families across the country. The new NLRB rules will strengthen and streamline the voting process by reducing unnecessary litigation and intentional delays. It will streamline pre- and post-election procedures and facilitate the use of electronic communications and document filing. Those are all common-sense steps that should not be controversial. So, Madam President, I am extremely disappointed that Senate Republicans want to now eliminate these rules and roll back the clock on worker protections. The resolution that we're going to be asked to vote on would eliminate steps to standardize and add transparency to the employee election process, eliminate steps that reduce frivolous litigation, and create a more cohesive and productive workplace for our workers and businesses. And it would fundamentally weaken NLRB processes and procedures that workers and businesses rely on when they're trying to settle disputes. Madam President, it's bad for business, it's bad for working families, it should not pass. Workers across this country deserve a fair process in the workplace, and the NLRB rules this resolution would eliminate, remove some of the unfair and unnecessary roadblocks so many workers face every day. And Madam President, I just have to say, well, we're here discussing this issue. I want to express my disappointment and anger at the recent report from the Inspector General about improper and politicized activities by a current Republican member of the NLRB board, an individual who previously worked for another board member who's a former staffer for a Republican member of the Senate. That report details multiple instances of ethics misconduct, including the sharing of confidential information with outside parties. I am hopeful that that issue will be fully investigated. I'm deeply worried about the actions some people will take to undermine an agency whose mission is to protect the rights of workers and employers, and honestly, I find it to be a sad statement about the nature of our politics today. Because, Madam President, the NLRB is doing a lot of good work for workers in America, and it shouldn't be tarnished with this sort of ethics issue. This agency has borne the brunt of political attacks over the last year from special interest groups and elected officials trying to score political points at the expense of workers and families. Many of these attacks have been inaccurate, many have been unfair. Some have used the case involving Boeing and workers in my home state of Washington to weaken the agency, even while the NLRB work is what allowed the two sides to come together and find a solution to that challenge. So I think this is wrong, and these attacks should end. The NLRB election rules are modest, they're common-sense steps towards a fairer system for workers and businesses, and will help us move towards a system that works for everyone. And they'll help make sure our workers can simply exercise their rights to bargain for fair wages, for benefits, and equitable treatment under the law. That's what our workers expect, it's what they deserve, and it's what the NLRB is working to deliver. So, Madam President, once again, I urge our colleagues to vote against that resolution of disapproval. It is the wrong way to go for workers, it is the wrong way to go for businesses and for the middle class. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.
The Senator from Illinois.
Madam President, let me join in the remarks by the Senator from Washington.